I'm very grateful for this opportunity to be here and share with you today what I hope is a motivating and inspiring story as we all go forth on this life's journey, which can sometimes be a challenge to say the least. My theme today is Pluck, becoming a spiritual warrior, cultivating peace and joy in a world of change and diversity. I'm going to begin with a true story of an extraordinary woman who was nicknamed Pluck. Now imagine for a moment that you are literally plucked from your life, from the world as you know it, from your job, from your family, from your community, from your friends. You're under doctor's orders. I'm afraid you can no longer go into any public buildings. Her sensitivity to even using a phone, watch TV, she could no longer go to the movies. She couldn't go to her church, be with her friends and family, because she couldn't even be in a place with a 60-watt light bulb. Her muscles would weaken. She would totally decompensate. If she went out to get her mail, she would pass out because of the electrical wires. She had to put her refrigerator outside in the garage. She lived by flashlight and a lot of prayer and devotion to God and the help and hope that an answer would come. And it eventually did when she was diagnosed with what we call EHS, which is electrical hypersensitivity. What this means is that there are waves, radio and microwaves, that are passing through the air all the time, from the lights in this room, and of course from our cell phones and computers and Wi-Fi. Now we also know that this happens, there's waves of communication also just by our thoughts, correct? Okay. Well, these particular waves of information are unsupportive. They actually interfere with our own biology and kind of scramble and shake it up. Matter of fact, this woman's name was Deborah Hyatt, and she has since, just recently, a book came out on her life. And you can see, this is Deborah, all you're going to see of her is her little feet with her flippers on, because the only place she could go was in nature and underwater where these waves of interference would not affect her. She had to take some incredible measures just to be able to live. One was, what would happen to her is, another thing is her brain would feel like it was on fire and was being jabbed with needles and pins. She was an executive, a successful executive in corporate America and a mother of two. She could no longer take care of her children, be a wife to her husband, and she had to leave her job. She found refuge in Hayesville, North Carolina, which is just about maybe an hour and a half from here, west, in a little place called the Chatuge, which is a lake and a dam. And she went out into the island there with a tent to live, until she came face to face with the bear and the coyotes ran her off. But Deborah didn't let that stop her. She just had incredible resources, and her most important one was the divine. She always relied on God and somehow knew there was an answer. You'll find the book extremely interesting, and you'll read it in a night. It's so compelling, with all of her courage. But she eventually found a home that she could go to, and a doctor by the name of Dr. Ray, who is an expert, or or should I say was, he passed at the age of 83 last August. In chronic disease, people came to him all over the world, and he did all kinds of testing, and he was located in Dallas, Texas. Because of his expertise in environmental health, he was able to get her disability for this, of which we consider now, for those who know that they suffer from it, at least 30% of our population has now been diagnosed. The biggest concern is our children, because their bodies are developing. The cells are reproducing as they grow. Well, these invisible things we're not aware of, just like our thoughts, and that's why we need to watch what we think. They're acting like a double-edged razor blade, interrupting the reproduction of healthy cells. We're seeing more cancer now in people under the age of 21 in the last 10 years globally that's ever been reported. And fortunately, there are mass movements all over the world in terms of had brought this to Congress. There are organizations, and I'll have resources on that after the potluck if you want to meet with me around 11:45, and I'll just pass those out and answer any questions for you on that subject. But it's a health concern for us that we need to all be aware of. The inspiring thing about Deborah, when I met her, she was a referral from her doctor. And the first time I went to her house, she invited me to her chapel in the woods. Sound familiar? Because she couldn't go to church, which she so dearly loved. But guess what? The church people came to visit her. Without their cell phones, of course. But they would meet her in her yard, and they would sing to her, and she loved to sing. Because Deborah so loved people, to have that disconnect and from others, and that they would come to her, was so rewarding. Matter of fact, a lot of people thought she was a little crazy. What do you mean, electrical sensitivity? We're around this all the time. Sure. But her system broke down over time due to stresses. Normal daily stresses that we all experience in life, and then she worked intensely in an electrical environment. And it was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back. But it was her faith that got her through, where she determined nothing was going to keep her from people. So what she decided to do one day was, when she went to the lake, is she was going to dress up in costume. She used to do that as a little girl. She loved to entertain and dress up and recreate stories and fairy tales. And she thought, now how am I going to make a costume when I can't use anything electrical? Well, someone gave her a 1930s Singer hand crank sewing machine out of the blue. They heard her need, and she had to learn how to crank it with one hand and feed the material with another. And she would go to the lake dressed up as maybe Little Red Riding Hood or Bo Peep or even a mermaid. And she would share stories of love and hope and faith with people. This was called her dam ministry, because the Chitook has a dam there, and she would go and walk that and greet and meet people all the time. So we all know what the word pluck means. You pull something, usually abruptly, from its source. But I did not know pluck had a second meaning. And that means to be resourceful, courageous, and daring in times of difficulty. Spirit. Deborah was a true spiritual warrior. Nothing kept her down. She even was able to have her own ministry in full costume on top of that. You know, when we think of war, That is all of us kind of cringe. It's something we don't want. It is a state of armed conflict and struggle. It's a competition of opposing forces where one feels a threat of some kind. There's a Gallup poll that now states that more people worldwide, 55% are feeling stressed throughout the day, 45% are feeling worried, and 22% are feeling anger. So this amplification of what we're seeing in the outer affects us, and we can be triggered. It's natural for us, our brain naturally goes to protection back here, okay? But what we want to do is go up here and flip the switch of higher consciousness and the realization that all of these things are happening, that we have a choice, that we can switch our attention and choose what we're going to put it on, because that's what we'll experience. But as a spiritual warrior, that takes a lot of training and practice. And it sure can help to have some support. Just look at the people around you. I bet you there's someone here in this room that you can call upon when you're feeling triggered by stresses. But the most important thing is to be able to call on ourselves, to rely on inner resources to go forward in our day. Desmond Tutu and the Dalai Lama wrote a book recently on joy, and one of the things they stated in that was they would no more think of plugging into the source of the divine or not plugging into it every day. It would be like going outside and speaking in public without clothes. It prepared them. It prepared them to be quiet, to be still, to arrange the conditions, to allow them to experience that sense of well-being and wholeness within them. To observe that yes, there is separation and conflict that we see around us, but to choose to establish and anchor that within ourselves or themselves so they could be that light, be that steadfast light as an example for the world. And that nothing was more important than sharing this through education, especially to our youth, and maybe to remind a few of us that it is already within us. And in any way that you choose to take the time to connect with that consciously, formally, mindfully, every day. And what is it that is at the root cause of this war, of this conflict? Perhaps we could ask ourselves, did they do it to me? Well, they are doing a lot of things, but I don't know that I have a lot of control over that. And in this world of diversity, we all have free will and choice. But maybe I could ask, what am I doing? And if I have the courage to go within, I might notice that the root cause might be in my own mind and heart, that there are some unresolved conflicts in there. We all have them. It's a normal thing. It's ordinary. But we want to be extraordinary. We want to come from this spirit to be a Pluck, to be able to stand up in the truth of our being and allow that to come forth. And that takes training, and that takes time, and it takes patience, and it takes the willingness to develop a set of skills within ourselves. To be focused, to place our attention here, not the reactive here. And a very simple thing we can do practically, and Unity is very much about practical Christianity. I like like to take and pretend I've got a little switch here, and I just flick it. And why do we do that? Because this area of the brain is the center of will, our executive functions, and higher states of consciousness, creativity, insight, discernment. Yay! So, just put it here. This is why in meditation it's often referred to in formal meditation. And I also recommend to do it through the day. Just keep your attention here and from the heart and above. To be uplifted, to engage this part of our brain. And guess what happens when we do that? It strengthens. So what happens when we get taken off center and we react to some piece of news or something somebody says or does? That's the opportunity to grow the pathways of strength and focus and higher consciousness, if we can catch it, if we're mindful enough. Mindfulness is attention and awareness. I thought it, but I caught it. And I just, someone said to me the other day, there's just something going on back here. I went, great, you're aware of that. Switch it up here. Bring it into the front. No backseat drivers. So this is something tangible we can do. So these unconscious responses, reactions to beliefs and limiting conditions is ordinary. But let's remember that each of us is extraordinary, just like Deborah. And no matter what we're facing, with faith and courage and determination and placing our attention here, we can create or experience that space of well-being easily. There's another book that's an ancient text. People have been using it, truth seekers, for like 2,000 years, called the Bhagavad Gita. Has anybody heard of that before? Wow, okay. So, this is a story of war and conflict in our individual life experience. Okay, it's an allegory. It's not a true story, but it was the one book that Gandhi took with him when he was in jail and found great consolation because it explained what we as human beings experience with all this mind stuff and conflicts in our minds and our hearts, and how to acknowledge that and renounce it or surrender from it in a loving, kind, and compassionate way, but with a strength and a conviction, not to be weak, not to be faint-hearted, but to use these resources and be patient and kind and steadfast and focused. The Bhagavad Gita means divine song. Srimad Bhagavad Gita, there's usually a prefix. Gita is to sing. And it's really, I like to think of it like, this is the glory of God singing its love and its knowledge and its truth and its wealth through every page in this book that shows us ways to awaken and be a spiritual warrior back to our truth. And one of the main characters, named Arjuna, he has to go and fight his cousins. He didn't want to do it. And it's really a representation of things we don't want to do. Like maybe not eat that other scoop of ice cream or whatever they may be. We're under the spell of materialism and our senses and our thoughts and beliefs and our conditioning. And what we want to do is switch that and be under the guidance of the freedom of our soul, our eternal self. and allow that to express so we can experience that. And they sometimes feel like they're in conflict because we don't want to do certain things. The human experience. But again, we become a spiritual warrior, not to fight this conflict, but to realize that's natural, that's part of our whole experience of life. But to choose where we want to go in them and take our time. We don't have to do everything all at one time. Let it be a gentle path, let it be a compassionate path, and allow others to do what they choose to do and keep our own peace. Keep our own peace. The unity principles of oneness. The real underlying cause, too, is this belief in separation. Now, a lot of us may intellectually believe we don't believe in separation, but I bet if we check our thoughts every now and then, some little critic will come up in our mind and judgment, and that's immediately when we go into separation. That's our conditioning. That's ordinary consciousness. See? But you can go, I'm in this game of life to go all the way. I don't have to be ordinary. I can be extraordinary. If Deborah can do it, I can do it. And we can. And we can. One of the things that I believe when we go to do self-inquiry and is, again, to do this thing called radical acceptance of whatever is happening. This holistic model is one that you can't push the anger away. You can't push the sadness away. It's part of the whole. Think of it as nature. So if we only had sun, the plants would burn up, right? Because there'd be no time to rest. To everything there is a season and a rebalancing. But there is a blueprint of wholeness that naturally will want to rebalance and come back to harmony. And we can experience that through right choice, through right living, through right thought, in a kind way. Forgive ourselves when we forgot. But use our strength, our determination, our willpower to say, I'm not going to fight this. This is like part of my experience. I'm just going to take that and lovingly bring it over here, and we're going to take it on another adventure. Take that energy and let it be moved into something else and more beneficial. And we can do it. Especially if Deborah can find resources. Get her groceries, all these things. We can too. And when I asked her, I said, well, how did you write this book? She said, well, first I put it on a whiteboard. Then I started to write it down, but I had to have it electronically presented to the publisher. So she sat in front of a word processor, wrapped in aluminum foil until she found other things that she could do to protect her body. She could only type for about an hour a day, and then she was in bed for 2 days. It took her 5 years. She cares so much about you, so much about the human race, so much about children, so much about pregnant mothers, so much about people whose bodies are already compromised and don't realize what's affecting them. And we are affected by every thought each of us thinks. That she wanted to write this book and give people hope and motivation to take care of themselves and live this divine song, live this divine life, encompassing the pain and the suffering that we all experience. And there's now at any greater time for us to stand up, come forth, and be a Pluck. Be a spiritual warrior. by keeping our own center so strong that we are not taking off center by all of the turmoil around us to be triggered. And that's a practice. So what I'd like to do is share a guided meditation with you in terms of aligning our resources and our whole, not only our consciousness, but our bodies, our minds, our spirits, our whole energy centers, so that we can start this process of staying more stable and anchored. This is all part of conscious living, mindfulness. It's also part of what we refer to as Qigong. It just means energy work or skill. It's really the mastery of our states of consciousness and bringing it into the body in a very simple way. So the premise is where your attention goes, your energy goes, and you can create your health and well-being and reconnect to it. So I want you to think about this as you're the spiritual warrior, and we're going to all armor up. Get ready. This is our training, okay? It's something you want to do every day, and I'm sure you have other ways that you do this too. But let's just begin this process of inner alignment together. Think of yourself as a glass, and you're going to be filled with water from the bottom up, and let's start there with our feet. So we're sitting upright, vertical, we're aligned. Think of this alignment, even though heaven is everywhere. Think of yourself as connecting, being embraced by heaven above you and earth below you, totally supported by heaven, earth, nature, and you are in the very center, for it is true. Bring your attention down to your feet, and you can tap your feet if you'd like and high-five Mother Earth. Just imagine what it would be like if you tried to get out of bed in the morning and it wasn't there. Remember that we all are always supported. Smile to Mother Nature with gratitude, for she is spirit embodied in material form. Feel grounded, sending roots all the way down. Let your attention flow back up, bringing all those resources that she provides, the earth that grows our food, the minerals, and even the life-giving, sustaining waters. Feel that flowing all the way up into your lower abdomen. And if you'd like, you can place your hands here to get a sense of connection to your body, to feed back this presence, to get in touch, to be connected. This is the area where we absorb our food, and it's a transformation process where we're nourished. It's also our gut, that enteric brain that informs us. It's also the physical place of energy and our core or physical center. It is our foundation of energy within that supports and sustains the physical body. So smile to this space within you and put a picture of yourself in there. Pretend like this is your home, because it is. We're choosing to move back in to this incredible instrument we call the body and make friends with it as it carries us, all of our actions, to perform through us. Balanced, healthy, happy, and whole. And as you have a picture of yourself inside there, see yourself smiling back at you, the observer. And know that this is your safe, comfortable place of foundation within yourself, and you can make changes in your life in any way you so choose, just by acknowledging that it is already so, and then taking all the follow-up action. Allow your breath just to breathe as if this area of your body was expanding like a balloon. And then emptying the air back out, the balloon would flatten. Again, expanding as the balloon fills, and then allowing the air to move back out, right there in your abdomen. It's like a heartbeat or a pulse, this energetic movement, enlivening this part of our body, and smile. Now let's move up to the heart center, and if you'd like, you can touch your heart. And we think of this as the core of our being, the seat of our soul, beyond the physical, emotional, and energetic heart. In Chinese medicine, they refer to it as the heart mind, the emperor. And HeartMath has now told us that our physical heart has its own brain and nervous system, and its rhythms, its intention, directs the organ called the brain. So as you touch your heart, open yourself to all of the gratitude, the caring, and the compassion that you can hold. Think of a friend, a family member, even perhaps an animal or pet that you love, and how they love us unconditionally. They are such a great example for us on how to live. And allow these feelings to expand here. They're already there. Sometimes they're just blocked. And in the new holistic wellness paradigm, and almost every book you read, the emphasis is not on stress reduction, but on what is wellness. Let us emphasize the positive and bring it forth. Let us take these actions every day to connect and welcome that loving presence of light unconditionally, quieting the self-critic, and just be here. And smile in the heart. And as we go up now to the head, the organ of the brain, for we now know that the mind is everywhere. It's in every cell. The consciousness is everywhere. The mind is just the organ through which we process consciousness, and of course it stores memories and processes other things. It's kind of the CEO in some ways, and through that it sends out communication through the nervous system to all the organs. So if you'd like, you can touch there in the front area of your forehead and flip that switch to open up your higher states of consciousness in this prefrontal lobe. And be reminded that even if you have an old thought of conflict of some kind, of a struggle, that's in the back seat. And it's just reminding you that, I want to protect you. We don't want this to happen again. But you bring it up to the front and you say, we're on a new adventure. And as you do this, as you catch it, know that the back seat, those old patterns, those pathways start to dissolve because you're building stronger ones of the truth of your being, of higher consciousness and self-remembrance here. And if you'd like, you can even imagine that you could breathe in and out there in the front of the forehead. This is the place of the observer, the soul of us, that eternal spirit that watches and observes everything. This is how we maintain that peace that passes all understanding as the silent witness of all that happens, where we connect with a sense of clarity and that light of consciousness that is pure and whole, that wants to express and support us on our journey of self-remembrance. Now imagine that you could breathe through the feet all the way up to the top of the head. And then whenever you exhale, the breath just flows back down like a waterfall back down to the feet. Gently, the breath moves from the feet up through the body, up to the top of the head. And flows back down as you exhale. Connecting, realigning, a sense of coherence, resonating in wholeness and oneness. Reconnecting to our own inner network. And we remember that the divine is within us. We are a pure expression of it, without separation. We allow now that place within our soul to express freely and peacefully. As we become a spiritual warrior of no conflict. And as you conclude, take a moment just to allow your eyes to open and bring this sense of well-being and alignment here into the room, to be shared on the front lines of life, skillfully renewing and practicing this or something similar every day to make that connection strong, solid, stable, and above all, remember when we go forth in life to smile in unconditional love and self-remembrance to everyone that we meet. Thank you.